My grandpa was a Baptist minister for 30 years, and my dad said he'd never be a minister. And when I was in high school, he went back to college to become a minister. I guess you never say never to God. I went to college to be a teacher and never found a teaching job. We were attending a church, and the youth pastor had left, and they had spent about 9 months looking for a youth pastor. And the senior pastor approached me. He said, "Hey, I know you've got an experience in education. I've seen you work with kids before. I know that you could do this." And talked to my wife, and we prayed about it, and I said, "You know what, I'll do it on a short-term, temporary basis till you find somebody." I was the full-time youth pastor, and it lasted about 6.5 years. I loved it. For the first time in my life, I felt comfortable in my own skin. I felt I was doing what God made me to do. I could see where all of the pieces and parts of my character, whether they be strengths or weaknesses, they all came together. And it was just one of those things where I like to say I was hitting my sweet spot. I was doing what I felt God made me to do, and I loved every minute of it. About 5 years ago, there was a situation that was brought to my attention repeatedly by people in the church that was ongoing, and it was something that I didn't want to think was happening, and I started looking into it. There was a confrontation with the person involved. My next step was to meet with the church board and to basically seek advice from them as far as how I should proceed with this. I had a meeting scheduled, and when I showed up at that meeting, I was told my services were no longer needed. So in a split second, everything changed. I mean, I didn't just lose a job. I lost my ministry. I lost an extended family and these kids who I'd known for 6.5 years. I lost relationships. My wife and kids lost friendships, and we lost our church. It wasn't just, I stopped clocking in over here. I mean, everything changed in a split second. I struggled not to be mad at God. Even then, there was a part of me that could see that good was going to come from this. And I couldn't see what that good was, and that made it harder. That made that valley seem longer, drier, darker, however you want to look at it. But it was an untethering. It was what's next? You know, I don't know where I'm going here. You know, I've got a family of 3 kids and a wife to support. I feel I have things that I can offer, and none of that mattered. And it was really kind of it was incredibly unsettling. It's easy to feel that way. It's easy to be in that valley, to be in that dry place, that dark place. And I think it's a trap that Satan puts there for us. He says, you know, you're alone. Nobody else can understand how you feel. You know, I don't care what you think or say or do. There's a part of you that's responsible for this, and you're going to be in this place for a long time, and it's not going to be fun. It's going to be painful, and it's going to hurt, and nobody else is going to understand. And then to fall into that cuts me off from my support system. It cuts me off from my friends. It cuts me off from my family, because I feel that nobody understands. There's nobody I can talk to, so therefore I'm not going to talk to anybody. And there were times where it was a struggle to pray. There were times where it was a struggle just to go before God and say, man, what's next? You know, we've been here for so long. What are you planning here? How long will we be here? And it's hard. I mean, there were days where it was just a constant struggle. I mean, there are days where I didn't want to get out of bed. And there were several long periods of unemployment. There were several periods of underemployment. There were several times where I'm doing a job and I'm going, really, this is where you want me? You want me to do this right now? And there were long times where he was quiet. There were days that the silence of God was almost unbearable. In these times that your faith's either going to dry up or it's going to go deeper. And that's kind of my decision. Am I going to pursue God? Even though He's pursuing me, am I going to turn and pursue Him as well? Or am I just going to kind of sit there and wait for His deliverance? Well, He doesn't work that way. There are always things that I can be doing. No matter where I'm at, no matter what I'm doing, there are always things I can be doing for Him. I can be an example. I can be a witness in how well I do this job that I hate. You know, am I coming in every day? Am I on time? Am I being the witness I need to be when given the opportunity? Am I doing the best I possibly can wherever I'm at? And I think that's one of the toughest things I learned was that God needs me in these places for whatever reason. And I may not know that reason. In this relationship, you got to have communication in any relationship. But in this relationship with God, there are times where I need to listen. I couldn't have done that before. When you're in that dry, dark, desert place and it gets really quiet and it gets really dark, you need to listen. You need to listen for God. And that's something you can only learn in that dry, dark desert place. There's this monk being chased by tigers, and he comes to a cliff, and he has no choice but to climb down the cliff. And the tigers are pacing at the top. At the bottom of the cliff are these just crashing sea and sharp, jagged rocks. All of a sudden he looks up and there are mice chewing on the vine he's hanging from. So he's got death below, death above, and his lifeline is getting chewed up. And he stops and looks in front of him, and there's a strawberry. Somehow this strawberry has taken root on this cliff face. And because of the sunshine and the salt breeze, it has produced this beautiful, perfect strawberry. And he reaches up, and it's the best thing he's ever tasted in his life. And he's not thinking about the rocks below, he's not thinking about the tigers above, he's not thinking about the mice chewing on his vine. He's thanking God for that moment, for that perfect strawberry. I think that applies to being in the valley too. I think you have to embrace that time because God's doing something. If God cares enough about you to send you to that valley, He cares about you an awful lot. And He has things planned for you. He has things planned for me that only I can do because He made me. I am unique in my strengths and weaknesses, my foibles, my warts, my characteristics. This recipe is a one of a kind. And God has things that only I can do for His kingdom. And sometimes that involves going to that valley. But the idea of tasting that strawberry, of being in the moment, of realizing that this too will pass, this too has value, this too is from God, is so important, so important.